Nos acompaña un gran mariscal de campo. Le llamaban hojalata, porque decía que tenía las tripas de hojalata. Un tipo aguerrido, un tipo fuerte, muy duro, que superó muchísima adversidad para llegar a la NFL y establecerse en la NFL. Comenzó su carrera de 10 años como quarterback en la liga con Santos de Nueva Orleans, Falcons de Atlanta, Detroit Lions, donde tuvo años de gloria, Chicago Bears, donde todavía tiene marcas del equipo históricas de más yardas en una temporada y más yardas en un partido aéreas, y termina su carrera con el equipo de San Diego Chargers, hoy Los Ángeles Chargers, y de ahí en adelante sufre una cantidad enorme de vicisitudes que hacen que él sea un ejemplo, una persona ejemplar para todos nosotros. Needless to say, I covered your career. I describe you as someone who was very tough, who played in the NFL. Nothing was given to him. Chances were placed in front of you, like when Rodney Peete got injured in Detroit. Not that you wanted that to happen, but certainly it gave you an opportunity. And how, to this day, Chicago, with its tradition of quarterbacks, you still have some records that are important records that still have your name on it and may still have them. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. And then I described that same attitude you needed for the years to come as you face tremendous adversity. Let's talk a little bit about football. I want to talk to you a little bit about life, and then I want to close with a little bit of the Super Bowl theme so we can get your thoughts on everything. You knew that no one was going to give you a spot in the NFL. We just spoke to a young quarterback named Luis Perez from San Diego, California, who's basically trying to follow your footsteps. What was that like, and what kept you going other than the love of the game, and what gave you hope that you really were going to have a chance when it didn't seem that way at all?
So I didn't get drafted out of college, even though I was the ACC Player of the Year as a senior at NC State. So I was ended up as an undrafted free agent going to New Orleans, and where they had Bobby Hebert and Dave Wilson already, and most teams carried two quarterbacks. So I knew when I got there I wasn't sticking. So I went back to school, going to finish up my degree, and then the 1987 strike happened with the players, and so I went, got a couple of phone calls from some teams. Actually went down to play in Atlanta for a few games, and then they ended up keeping me for that year. But then I got cut the next year and was waiting around for maybe more NFL teams to call. No one did. So I went up to Canada and played in the CFL. That was the one team that worked me out when I was coming out of school, and played up there for a year and a half, and didn't have a contract to go back to. So then I just called around a bunch of NFL teams, all of them, in fact, except for Atlanta. And then Detroit was the only one to call me back. And it turns out that it was June Jones, their receiver coach. When he was a couple years prior, I was at NC State, and June was the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator for the Houston Oilers. And we had some good receivers, one of which they drafted, Haywood Jeffries, in the first round. And I think from what Gene told me, he said, yeah, I thought she could play. So I made a recommendation to the Lions. So that's why I got that call back.
What kept you going? I know the love of the game, I know. But what made you think that there was going to be a chance when it didn't seem that way for a long time?
Well, I was probably on my last, those last phone calls I made to the NFL teams. I was probably my last chance, really. And so had the Lions not, like I said, one team called me back, not two. So had the Lions not called me back, I don't know what I'd be doing today.
I wanted to ask you about the resiliency and the attitude you had through your NFL years. Of course, you had some great years in Chicago as well. Detroit, in Detroit, you're remembered, rightfully so. A team that had a lot of difficulties. When you showed up, nobody expected you to take them all the way to the championship game, the NFC championship game. And I think people remember you for who you were. Then good years in Chicago. All that experience you had to take with you to the rest of your life. And an athlete has a very unusual life because their productive years, their peak, if you want to speak to that, happens early. And then you got the rest of your life to figure out what else you want to do. In your case, life hit you hard a couple of times. Please explain to us how that resiliency you showed before helped you get through some of the things you have to face in life.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question and a good one. And I think as time goes on, I just got used to working and working out, and I wasn't born any of the things that athletes would want to be. Wasn't tall, wasn't big, wasn't fast, wasn't strong, didn't have great arm, but I worked on everything, and because of that, I got better, and I got better. I got good enough to be good, and so I think it was that never taking no for an answer that eventually kind of works its way into who you are. And so that's, I think as a, sort of a training tool, that's one of the things that comes out of working hard and then just getting to be comfortable with the grind. And because, as you mentioned, life is that. And there are things that come along your way, and I don't care who you are or what it is you do, that are going to be challenges in your life. And like you mentioned, I've had some very, very difficult ones. And it turns out that, in a fairly short time span, I lost a son, Griffin, who was 18 at the time, to a heroin overdose, but he'd been, that was as a senior in high school when he probably shouldn't have gone back to high school because he went into a drug treatment facility when he was in 10th grade. And, uh, and so anyway, it's a long story, but he ended up, being clean and sober for quite a while and then relapsed, and which is the case with, most people who do. It usually takes multiple times. But and in Griffin's case, it was a sad and tragic ending to a fairly short life. And then after that, my mom, actually that took place in October 2011, and in May, so I'm literally the day after Mother's Day, my mom found out she had uterine cancer, stage 4 uterine cancer. And so it was, they found an oncologist. It was a very radical surgery that she had, survived. But then later, about 8 months, maybe 6 months later, the cancer came back, and she passed away about 8 months after Griffin did. And then my dad, about that time that my mom passed away, he had some untreated acid reflux that then turned into esophageal cancer. And I don't know if you've ever known anybody who's had that, but there's no getting out of that one. And that was about a 3-year steady decline. And so just, it was a convergence of a lot of things going on that led me to want to no longer be here. And so I actively pursued the best way to do that. And what I found was to a gun, shooting myself in the head was the best way. And fortunately, it didn't work. And so I'm still here. And now that was coming up on 10 years ago this August. And through some incredible doctors and, some life-saving doctors, in fact, along with some lengthy 3 or 4 years of rehab. But then there's always, things that come up. Like for a couple of those years, I wasn't sleeping. And when I say sleeping, I mean maybe an hour or two. And over a long period of time, that really does affect your, personality. And so I eventually went to go see a neurologist who specializes in brain trauma. And that's made all the difference in the world. So again, I've had a lot of support from a lot of people, and one of the things now I haven't had depression since wherever it was back in August of 2015, but I make sure that it stays that way.
And Erik, what are some of you talked about the grind when you were a player. You talked about the grind when you were a player. You talk about improvements. You talk about hanging on. What are some of the skills? In other words, what did you do day to day, and what do you do day to day? Because I've met a lot of NFL players, including kickers, that have some after effects from playing in the league to keep yourself sharp, to keep yourself going, to keep yourself moving?
Well, I think physically back then, I trained a lot physically, and then eventually I got connected to when I was in Detroit. A guy named Kevin Wildenhouse, who was a psychologist, and he helped me kind of went through some deep breathing exercises and mindful guided imagery. Really, Kevin was like the glove that all the rest of the fingers fit into. And I can't overemphasize how important that was.
The things that you do to keep sharp physically and mentally. And also, I should say, when I say mentally, I mean your animus, your mood. I'm interested in hearing this, Erik.
Back to my playing days, I think what propelled me to continue, I just fell in love with working and working out. And Kevin really helped me slow my mind down. And so that we began working on things like deep breathing and guided imagery and mindfulness, really, of being able to calm myself down and kind of begin to see the game before plays would happen and kind of slow that whole process down. And that's really what led to a lot of the success that I had. And I'm forever grateful for Kevin and what he was able to do for me. It kind of was like, all the working out and watching video and game film and all that stuff, training all the time. Kevin was like the glove that all the rest of the fingers fit into. And so to this day, I haven't given that up. And I see a psychologist once a week. I keep a close circle of friends that, are now attuned to me and vice versa. And so those are the type of things that I think, you alluded to. Yes, it's great physically to have a schedule every day and to try to keep getting better. But it's also great to have a circle of people around you, like a home team, like I would call it, of trusted people that you can go to and confide in, or that know you well enough that if for whatever reason you seem a little off, that they would reach out to you. And it's really the power of being a good listener, being empathetic, curious, and just listening. Really, I mean, people have said, "Well, I don't know what to say." That's the beauty of it. There's nothing to say. It's really just listen. That's really, and it doesn't mean someone's gonna, bam, just because you listen today, everything's all better. Nope, that doesn't happen. So it works in little incremental stages. So if you're just there today, tomorrow, the next, and you make yourself available, people that are going through something, that's what they're looking for. Just the consistency of being able to talk it through. Before that ever happens, though, I like to be proactive, and there's a program that I've helped launch. Well, it's not off the ground just yet, but it's soon to be, for young kids, called Mental Health Touchdown. We're going to start it out with fourth, fifth, and sixth graders after school, and it's really about getting them to first identify what human characteristics there are that are positive that they would like to embody themselves, and then search for those in other people, and eventually begin to learn how to approach that person. And then from there, build a home team. As at that age, it could be a parent, a coach, a teacher, maybe a emotionally mature friend, older friend. And then as the years go by, that you'll have the skills to begin to cultivate, because people come and go. And so being able to keep that going throughout your life is as important, if not more, if not the most important thing to get through life.